watch this.
Idaho has had a rich history with nuclear power, yet we've never had a commercial power plant based on splitting atoms. That could be about to change in a spot that just recently rejected an alternative energy source. The Gem State's congressional delegation has never been strong in numbers, but they've certainly wielded some power over the years. Today we highlight some of that influence with the first of our stories from Capitol Hill. The West Ada School District can't seem to get away from hands of various skin tones and inclusive imagery, but they're certainly trying. What we learned today about some of the district's training materials for teachers. The state of Idaho may have been the first to power a city with nuclear energy. That'd be ARCO in 1955, but that was short-lived. It only lasted about an hour. And our electricity generation has been non-nuclear since. However, that could be a thing of the past as well, with a local company wanting to build the Gem State's first ever commercial nuclear power plant. The project would use technology rarely used in the United States, but more cutting edge, they say. And they want to build the plant in the same spot that has already said no to a wind farm. So as you can imagine, not everyone who lives near that proposed site is on board with the plan. Here's Aspen Shumpert.
Jerome County could be home to Idaho's only commercial nuclear power plant.
Where we're going to be located is completely shut off from the public. It's in desert ground. They won't even, driving down Highway 93, they won't even see our operation.
Dan Adamson with Sawtooth Energy and Development Corporation says the company wants to build a nuclear power facility on 320 acres of federal land. He says most of those acres will be a buffer zone, but that the entire operation will be about 40 acres. He adds it would be one of the first in the nation to use small modular reactors.
The old thing of these 1,000-megawatt nuclear power plants are going to be a thing of the past. They're going to be ghost towns. And it's all going to be a single SMR or a cluster of SMRs providing the power that's needed, because they are so much more advanced, so much safer.
Adamson says the project will address growing electricity demands across the western United States.
But our plan right now is to wheel it, is what it's called, wheel that power to Southern California. But it'll be there producing power and shipping it 2 3/4 mile to the substation and being distributed all over the western United States.
The quote, midpoint small modular reactor project number 1 would be located on the same BLM land the Lava Ridge Wind Project was supposed to be, a project that was halted after President Donald Trump signed an executive order on the day of his inauguration.
The midpoint substation is like a fresh kill to a pack of grizzly bears.
Some Magic Valley residents have concerns about a project like this impacting local water resources.
Rather than powering the places we need the electricity. We need it in Portland, build it out, set up outside Portland. Don't set 4 of them or 6 of them on in Jerome over your aquifer and my aquifer.
And others who worry about the environmental impact with a low benefit to Idahoans.
You cannot take one EIS from wind and solar and hand it over to nuclear, because the environmental impact is different. But it's gonna cost Idahoans, these residents here, the cost to distribute the power elsewhere for the middleman to make money.
Adamson says the project will need government support. KTVB asked U.S. Congressman Mike Simpson, who was against the Lava Ridge plan, what he thought about this instead. He says he needs to learn more about it, but it could be something he supports.
I had a gentleman tell me that the future growth of this country is not going to be hampered by investment in capital. It's the availability of energy, and that's what's going to hold us back. So we've got to have a firm supply of energy.
Adamson says right now, California has the highest demand for the power that would be produced at the plant. But if other states are needing it, like Idaho, those states will be able to buy the power. The project still requires approval from multiple agencies, including the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And Brian, additional public comment periods and more feedback will continue as we kind of go through this approval process, but very much in early stages for this.
Very much so. Well, from what I understand, it'd only be enough power if it were to be built to generate enough power to power like what, 400,000 homes, something like that?
Yep.
So if California is the one who wants a lot of that, I figure we're not going to be left with a lot here.
Yeah.
So that could be detriment to that. I would assume.
And that also might be something that might come down the line years and years later for Idahoans to benefit from this, but it sounds like not immediately, if so.
And speaking of years and years, this technology that's only, I think, being used in 2 places around the world still is a few years off to being used here and approved.
Yeah, which is why this project would take years to even be able to come to reality. I think they said maybe close to 2030.
Yeah, all right, still early stages. Thank you very much, Aspen. Idaho's congressional delegation has held steady at 4 for more than a century. That's 4 members of Congress. And during that time, we've had a few influential members. Senators William Borah and Frank Church come to mind. And perhaps you could throw in Congresswoman Helen Chenoweth Haig into that mix. Whatever your criteria, that status continues today. The Gem State may rank near the bottom when it comes to total representation in Congress, 2 in the House versus 52, for example, like in California. But our members still find themselves plugged into some of the most important roles in the legislative branch, giving Idahoans some outsized influence in our nation's capital. Joe Paris went there to our nation's capital to find out what that power holds and how it translates to issues Idahoans care about most. And today, he visits with Congressman Mike Simpson and Russ Fulcher.
The House will be in order.
In the United States House, Idaho's delegation doesn't even come close to making up 1% of the legislative body, just 2 out of 435, but their influence is certainly outsized.
Those of us in the Idaho delegation have been very blessed. If you were king for a day and you wanted to give influence to a state and you had 4 people in 4 places, there's a very good chance that you would strategically put them all where we are right now. And that wasn't necessarily by design, but that's how it's worked out over the course of time.
Congressman Russ Fulcher represents Idaho's 1st congressional district.
We've got well over 1 million people in our district, and that's a huge congressional district, largest in the nation right now. It's because of Idaho's growth. That's a good thing because Idaho's growing because people want to be there.
Subcommittee will come to order.
And those people have a representative on one of the most important committees, Energy and Commerce.
And I believe it's somewhere around 70% of all the legislation that comes through the House goes through that committee. And so with Congressman Simpson, with appropriations, on the House side at least, just about every piece of legislation that passes through the House has Idaho fingerprints on it of some sort.
The Energy and Water Appropriation Bill signed by the President in 2018.
You'll see the Idaho influence rooted deeply here.
Thank you, Chairman Clough.
Congressman Mike Simpson sits on arguably the most powerful House committee, Appropriations, a.k.a. Budgets, also working as the chairman on Interior, Environment, and related agencies, leading major budget discussions.
And when they're putting the package together, that's when you interact with leadership saying, hey, if you're going to put that in there, then I'm not going to be able to vote for it and that type of thing. So that's the kind of interaction that goes on between members and between leadership when they put these packages together.
The high visibility of the role comes with the spotlight on decision making, magnified for sure in the budget world, like with votes on the recent rescission package.
I have to look at a bill and weigh it and say, in total, is it good or is it bad? I could find a reason to vote against every appropriation bill because there's something in there that might be important to somebody else, but I think is crazy, or whatever.
Idaho's congressional offices will tell you the #1 topic they get calls on recently is the Big Beautiful Bill, and specifically the Medicaid provisions. Both Congressman Simpson and Fulcher supported efforts to cut out what they describe as waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program. Critics say this will take away coverage from people. Supporters say it's a cost-saving measure to ensure survival of the program. It does come down to perspectives on the so-called entitlement programs and how they should operate.
It's framed that way because there are people that believe that everybody that comes here ought to qualify for any American program, whether it's food stamps, whether it's Medicaid, any other program, that they ought to qualify for it because they don't distinguish between someone that's here legally and someone that's here illegally. I think we ought to take care of American citizens. And so I get a little tired of the 15 million people are going to lose their benefits or something like that. We know about 15 million people who shouldn't be in this country that over the last 4 years have been let across the border.
You can only register for Medicaid in one state now. You used to be able to, you could do multiple. And so in Idaho, for example, a lot of people move from California. You can file for it in California, file for it in Idaho. Well, that's not right. And so we fixed that. Non-citizens don't necessarily qualify for all that, right? Well, they don't pay into the tax structure the way that citizens do. And so I think that's fair too. Bottom line is that if you're on the traditional population for Medicaid, you can expect that to be there. And thankfully, due to these reforms, it probably will be there. And it wouldn't have been unless we'd have made these changes.
Immigration is also a major Idaho topic in the national spotlight. Agriculture and dairy industries across our state depend on that immigrant workforce. But the conversation comes at the crossroad of a renewed conversation about immigration and enforcement of laws.
The answer to the immigration question, I think, is very simple. Come to America legally, all right? But that also means for those of us in a leadership position, we need to make that reasonable, set the policy so that we can address our needs but create a legal channel as well. And so now that the border is secure, I think we'll be able to address that.
They're a critical part of our economy, and I think the administration is moving in that direction. So I'm thinking we're having a good chance of maybe passing legislation to reform the H-2A program. We've got to create a legal workforce for agriculture, actually for the housing industry, for the hospitality industry, and all those things. And I think we're headed in the right direction.
And coming up tomorrow on the 208, we're going to have a profile over on the Senate side of things. Brian, over on the Senate side, you could argue that Idaho really has the most pound-for-pound power out of any really delegation. Of course, in the United States Senate, every state gets 2 seats. It is interesting, too, when I was talking to a viewer about the stories that we were covering, they said, well, how did Idaho get these high-profile positions? A lot of it is tenure. If you look at Idaho's delegation, they've been there for decades. And as you work your way through the system, you find yourself in these leadership positions. And something that Congressman Fulcher also highlighted, they're also in the majority party right now. So during the Biden administration, their influence is significantly different.
It's diminished.
Yeah. So now that
depending on how Congress is stacked.
Correct. And with the way that Congress is stacked right now with the Republican majority, very narrow, and President Trump in the Oval Office, it does put Idaho's congressional delegation in a very unique spot. When I talk to members of Congress from other states while we were in D.C., truly envious of the situation Idaho has found itself in.
I have a question about what Congressman Simpson said. I talked about, or you mentioned it in your story, the waste, fraud, and abuse, that's why they voted for the big, beautiful bill when it comes to Medicaid. Did they have any examples of this waste, fraud, and abuse, this rampant waste, fraud, and abuse?
Yeah, so when you talk about the programs itself, the entitlement programs, it's not that people are feeling, oh, they're entitlements. These are just what they're called. But to answer your question, there are states, for example, that would allow undocumented people to receive benefits because that state has decided as part of the expansion population, for example, Utah, pregnant women and children are allowed to get certain health benefits that are not really supposed to, in some states' view, go to them. So they talk about that type of benefits, and that 15 million is an estimate from some of the data that's been crunched. You can see that some people believe it's less, some people believe it's more.
And did he say the 15 million that will be kicked off Medicaid, it's okay because there are 15 million people who came across the border illegally? Is that the equation?
There are 2 numbers that are commonly construed that way. He didn't specifically outline it that way, but some people have pushed out to this number of the open border policy during the Biden administration, how many people came into the country, and then how many people are estimated to be on these programs in their perspective. But you talk to critics, they will say that those numbers maybe are overblown and that the 2 numbers have nothing to do with each other. Again, though, we know that from the federal level down, especially in a state like Idaho, conservative majority, there is really a renewed look at kind of getting rid of the expansion population in the sense that they want to go back to what the Medicaid, Medicare programs were originally designed for.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Look forward to tomorrow. Appreciate it. All right. We're just about a week away from the first day of school. And to get ready for the school year, teachers are getting ready as well. In the West Ada School District, for example, they're getting ready by being required to watch several training videos through a program called Vector. It's on their district website, and it makes clear all employees must watch these videos and read the policies within 30 days of the start of their contract. Well, one of those videos about English learners' compliance contains a certain curious graphic. That's how the training video begins. So I'm sure you noticed that image in the lower right-hand corner, the raised hands of various skin tones with hearts in their palms. For those who have followed our coverage of the Everyone is Welcome Here poster and how the West Ada School District handled that, well, that image might look a little familiar. In fact, it's used 4 different times during that training video.
By communicating and collaborating with EL department personnel, instruction for English learners falls under federal programs. If you cannot find what you need,
There's all 4 examples. So you might remember, we were told, well, we weren't, because we weren't granted a chance to interview anyone with the West Ada School District. But back in March, the district spokesperson told the Idaho Statesman the district's issue with middle school teacher Sarah Inama's inclusive poster wasn't its message of everyone is welcome here, just the imagery of the different colors in the word everyone and the hands with the different skin tones. Days later, the district's chief academic officer said this on a local podcast.
If there was a poster that just said everyone is welcome here, black background, white words, do you think the team would have objected to that?
I don't think the team would have. And I say that because those exist in our schools.
I was going to say, you have things that are
Yes.
almost identical to this. They just don't have multicoloring, and then they don't have the hands that obviously are different shades of skin tone, right? Ranging from white all the way to black.
Yeah.
So
the text by itself doesn't allow for interpretation. The text by itself communicates a message. Now, it's important to act that way at the same time, but we want to make sure that the interpretation of the visual images, that's the issue that exists here.
The interpretation of the visual images, that's the issue that exists. Even the state's attorney general, in an op-ed to justify him calling the Everyone is Welcome Here poster a violation of state law, well, AG Raul Labrador said he called the poster a signal of adherence to diversity, equity, and inclusion, saying, quote, rainbow colors and progressive symbols accompanying these messages make their political purpose unmistakable. This federal programs training video has been used by the district since 2022. So we reached out to West Ada today to ask how an Everyone is Welcome Here poster is illegal and not allowed, and yet current training videos can contain virtually the same image as you see there. That's what they look like together. What's the difference between these 2 images? Well, according to the West Ada School District, nothing. They say both are a violation of House Bill 41. That'd be the flags in schools law that went into effect on July 1st. We were told they are in the process of replacing that logo from circulation to maintain compliance with the new state law. They told us today the former logo, the one you see with the hands and stuff, that was widely used, they're in the process of replacing it, and it's ongoing. And it will be replaced in the video that we referenced with the new logo, which is basically just a recycled logo from the West Ada Education Foundation, who, by the way, on their website, under the About Us tab, has a picture of a rainbow-colored heart. So we'll see how long that lasts there. I know they're not connected, but still. Bottom line, it won't be long before West Ada students and now teachers will no longer be subjected to hands of various skin tones or palms with hearts or colored lettering that resemble any sort of rainbow. All right, it's summer. Best time to buy fruits and vegetables at your local grocery store, right? Well, how many times have you gone there to pick up fruits or veggies, and they're just kind of blah, like there's no flavor to them? It's not what you were hoping for when you walked in. Well, it's likely because those fruits and vegetables might be out of season, and as Hunter Funk shows us, there's a group that tracks what's fresh in Idaho and the best time to get this, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you like the fresh stuff, this is actually the best time of year to shop local, and it's because that produce is starting to pile up in Idaho's late summer harvest. And behind a lot of that fresh food is a program you probably have never seen, or you've probably seen, but may not know much about. It's called Idaho Preferred. It's part of the state agriculture department, helping producers connect with consumers and helping you know what's in season. Erica White, the program manager, says here's what to shop for.
So right now we're rolling into more of our stone fruit. So we're seeing our peaches and our apricots. We just wrapped up going We've got beautiful big watermelons right now. A lot of our greens, we're starting to see carrots, we're going to be rolling into onion season. So we're really starting to head into that August, September, more peak of harvest time where we get really big diversity.
And you can find them at the farmers market, in grocery stores, or right on the farms. August is Farmers Market Month, and September marks Idaho Preferred Month. Those celebrate growers, ranchers, and retailers bringing local food to the forefront. You can even use their What's in Season calendar to plan your grocery list based on what's fresh right now. And chances are you will see the blue and gold Idaho Preferred logo next to those items in the next few weeks because of those celebrations. Now, coming up tonight at 6, we're going to take a closer look at how shopping in season isn't just good for your taste buds, but also helps boost Idaho's local economy. Ryan?
I'm sure some of these fruits last a little longer, like their
Yes.
in-season time is a little broader than others.
Yeah.
Like you got to really be pinpointed on some of those, like tomatoes.
Tomatoes, watermelon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Potatoes, though, well, the rest of potatoes, about a year long.
A year long. Same with apples. All right. Thanks, Hunter. All right, so remember a few weeks ago when we told you about the couple who was selling tickets to go to their wedding? They charge people almost $60 to go to that wedding, or maybe you could pay $1,000, you get a VIP ticket. Well, we received several comments after we shared that story. Most of them thought it was kind of tacky or self-indulgent, like this one from Stephanie. Are you kidding? Donations for the honeymoon fund? That's a much better option. So ridiculous to charge for a wedding. But on the other hand, Christy is all for it, or was all for it. How special and a clever idea to sell tickets to your wedding. Congrats to the happy couple. Yeah, clever is right. Clever like a fox, because apparently the couple had a lot of people willing to pay to see them tie the knot. Marley Jacks told us today they were able to raise more than $130,000 from those ticket sales. $130,000. Well, that money is not going into their pocket. No, as we told you then, it's going to be donated to a nonprofit called Village Impact, which helps provide education to students in rural areas of Kenya. She told us that money is going to help pay to build 8 classrooms. All right, we got this note from Julie today. It says maybe the decades in Congress is part of the problem. They think they don't have to listen to their constituents. Meanwhile, Jim says, interesting to note, illegal or undocumented aliens, if they're working, and most of them are, they're paying taxes into our system. They just can't claim any credit for them. Meanwhile, John from Drome says West Ada needs to get a clue and support inclusion, not discrimination. It's from the top down, actually.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.